Welcome, actress and Global Entrepreneurs Council member Preity Zinta and Rise founder Amanda Nguyen in conversation with Asha Curran, Chief Innovation Officer and Director of the Belfer Center for Innovation and Social Impact at 92Y.
Thank you both for being with us today. What an honor. These are two women who are just doing incredible work for women and girls and addressing and tackling a very, very tough problem of rape culture and violence against women in this country and around the world. So let's dive right in, Amanda. You've said that navigating the broken criminal justice system was worse than any experience you've had. What does reform for sexual assault victims need to look like?
Yes, so I am a rape survivor, and I recently, with my team at Rise, a nonprofit I founded, wrote a civil rights bill that tackles sexism in the law against survivors, and yes, there are male survivors. The bill just passed unanimously through the United States House of Representatives, 309 to 0. Yeah.
And tell everybody the stat you told me backstage.
Yes, thank you. So in modern history, according to Quorum, a data analytic firm, only 0.016% of bills in U.S. history have passed both chambers unanimously on a recorded vote.
One more. So what about on college campuses? What are we doing to tackle that problem?
You know, every single college campus can do better. The bill tackles both on and off campus survivors, but honestly, it starts from having conversations like this, making sure that people understand this is an issue and it needs to be taken seriously.
I would think it will also start kind of even earlier as we acknowledge that women and girls are inherently undervalued in this society.
Absolutely.
And that trajectory leads us right to college and where that problem exists. Preity, rape is listed as the most common crime against women in India. And certainly we have all seen some horrific stories coming out of the media in the past couple of years. This must be really traumatic for you to be witnessing. Tell us what's happening.
Well, I wouldn't really say it is India-centered, this problem. I think it's a global phenomenon.
Certainly.
You know, it's a problem everywhere, all across the globe. And I do feel that when something like this comes up, people react differently to it. Men react differently, completely differently as opposed to women, because I don't think men can actually really comprehend what this does to a woman. So a step forward would really be if in policy making there were more women involved, you know, because always men that are involved in these kinds of policy making. The fact that she's written a bill herself would be very different from somebody who is completely out of it, and they would never have the inside perspective to it. So when women go through violence, it is perceived very different to a lot of times, like, you know, let's say in India, we're talking about, okay, what are the steps we can take? There's awareness, obviously, but there's also a policy, right? Like how evidence is collected. Can it be backed with DNA research? With DNA evidence, can it be backed with that? So whenever we talk about it, one of the biggest problems that comes up is people are like, oh, it's really great you're talking about it, but what about false cases? So every step of it there are issues with it, but then we say, okay, you're talking about false cases, but what about if you use DNA evidence? It can also help somebody get off the hook, as opposed to getting on the hook, right? So crime is going to be there, you can't change it, but I think if policy is stronger, if there's more awareness, if there's better collection of evidence, if there's better processes, if you have fast-track courts. So it's a bit of an uphill task in the long run. But when you see someone like her, you're like, okay, you know what?
You're inspired.
You're absolutely inspired.
Yeah, and what else? Are there any sort of creative interventions or things like the cell phone with the panic button? What else have you seen? And talk a little bit about that. I don't know if the audience knows.
Yes, I think it's a very positive step that you have cell phones with the panic button, but if you don't have the support system around it, what does a panic button do? A panic button can say, beep, all right, there's a woman in distress, but is there a quick way of, again, evidence collection? Is there rehabilitation? Because it's okay to help somebody, but what about after that? So you need rehabilitation. You need people to say, okay, you know, one of the things I have seen whenever there's violence with women is a lot of times people think it's being exaggerated. It might be an attention seeker. It might be something with a woman with a prior motive. So these are mindsets.
Do you see that mindset shifting in the younger generation, both men and women?
I think the mindset is shifting, but I'm also an eternal optimist. I would like to look at life more positively. But yes, mindsets are shifting, but I think it's important for women to support women, and more than men to support women, it's also very, very important for women to support women. And I think it's a small step at a time, one small step, but it'll eventually get better.
Amanda, how about you? What do you see in terms of shifting narratives, shifting mindsets?
You know, one of the things I always want people to understand out of what RISE has been able to do is not only the substance, so how terrible the criminal justice system in the US and around the world is for survivors and for rape, but also that young people can absolutely make a difference in their own communities. That mindset, I think, is amplified by social media, by the fact that we're able to tap into these networks and amplify our voices.
How is it that young people can make a difference in their own communities? Give us a couple concrete ways.
Absolutely. You know, the reason that we've been so successful is because we really went out and we emailed every member of Congress and we took meetings with whomever and whenever they wanted. We met with senators themselves and we met with interns in the hallway if they had 5 minutes for us.
And what kind of reactions did you get?
Oh my gosh, the whole range. I mean, there were people who had open arms, and then there were people who threatened me. You know, it really.
Is there a gender breakdown or an age breakdown in terms of the
sexism,
receptivity?
ageism, all the isms is a reality when you're doing advocacy. But at the end of the day, I remember once I was really tired and it was a tough day. There are a lot of trolls on the internet, you know, who read these things and try to tear people down. But I went home and one of my teammates had printed out the letters from survivors across America. There were hundreds of them. He had taped them to the wall, ceiling to floor. And there were letters from people from other countries as well. I actually just came back from Japan where I met with activists and government officials who are inspired by the work that RISE is doing here in the United States, pushing for these rights in Japan themselves. The letters I got were also from India, from Dubai. I mean, there is a global movement happening here, and it happens when each one of us realizes that the most powerful tool we have is our own voice, no matter how young or old.
And our connectivity to one another,
Absolutely,
right? That we are
yes.
as accountable to women in India as we are accountable to women
Exactly.
here in the United States and our own children and their behavior as well. Well, the work that you're doing is very inspiring. Any last words before we have to wrap up? What comes next for both of you?
Oh.
So even if the federal bill passes, and we hope that it will get out of conference soon and go to the president's desk for his signature, we need to fight in the state houses for this. And around the world, resoundingly, we're hearing survivors and members in their legislative houses call for this. You know, I honestly think that the theory of change is that hope is contagious. If you understand, you know, what the issue is, and you can see there is a way to empower people to move forward, then people are going to take that. And the Survivor Bill of Rights is that way that doesn't alienate anyone. Just like you said before, we have all different sides coming to the table for this, and it is so possible to create a better future for everyone.
Wonderful. Preity, what's next for you?
I think it's very important for people who have voices to stand up and use that voice for people that are voiceless. One of the biggest problems that I have seen is whenever you stand up for somebody, people turn around and say, why are you getting involved? It doesn't concern you. Just let it be. I think it's very important for people to get involved because we expect people to be involved when it concerns us. And then we feel like, oh my God, why isn't anybody standing there with me? So it's important that irrespective if it concerns you directly, I think it's important to get involved. It's important to be there because there are a lot of people that don't have the platform we have, they don't have the confidence we have, they don't have the resources we have. And I think precaution is always better than cure. So if on that level, if we get involved, a lot of people are going to think twice, because especially in third world countries, it's so much easier to get away with it because the system doesn't come down on you that hard. Because, you know, if it's a country of a huge country, there are like thousands and millions of cases. By the time that case comes up, it takes you 3-4 years. So it's important as communities, if we get involved, the perpetrator is going to think about it like 10 times before doing something. So as much as theory we can say, it's also conditioning, it's what people think.
Well, I have to say that every time you guys tell your stories so openly and honestly, it inspires others to do the same. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.